What is your "you have become the very thing you swore to destroy" moment? I've always been about the punk life and espousing anti-corporate ideologies. A few years out of college I was working as a job coach for teenagers with disabilities, so I would dress in business casual to model appropriate work attire. My car that was over a decade old driven hard was about to die, so I traded it in. I wanted something with 4-wheel drive and good storage capacity, as I did a lot of camping during the summer, so I bought a used RAV4. My girlfriend at the time was working at a canteen in a VA hospital that sold Starbucks coffee, and she'd bring some packages of grounds home if it was old. Anyways, this all converged one day as I'm listening Anti-Flag and realize I'm in khakis and a button-up shirt, drinking Starbucks while driving my SUV to work. I feel this so hard with my fiance and I. We used to be so into the punk scene in our area, going to shows, doing crazy stuff, believing in anarchy and never wanting to grow up and be domesticated. Now we're planning a wedding. We both drive brand new cars. We adore hanging out with our friends' kids, and we'd rather stay in and watch a movie than go party. Growing up is weird. My nephew begged me to play Fortnite with him for a week straight. My sister was on vacation and I let him use my Xbox as much as he wanted to. I absolutely hate this game, but it made him happy and I really didn't mind watching him play. After watching him play several matches I understood the building mechanics a little better, so I looked up the controls. His eyes lit up when I finally went to him and said, "Okay, let's give Fortnite a shot." We loaded in, grabbed some weapons, and hugged the wall of the storm. His go-to strategy. I wasn't going to argue with a 7-year-old. Made it into the remaining 8 players. Finally got some contact, and I scored my first kill. Before I knew it there was Justice and one other player. He was clearly skilled. He took me down to the ground. As I'm bleeding out near death, my nephew blasts this guy with an RPG. Leave my uncle alone, boom. Victory. In my very first match, I looked over at my nephew and he was just crying his eyes out. He had never won a match before, ever. Playing 2 years and never won a game. I thought he was upset, but it was this just sheer happiness I've never seen in him before. I still really don't care for the game that much, but we made a great team and now we have something to bond over together. Leave my uncle alone. Legend. My dad was a huge Neil Young fan. He would always blast his Neil Young tapes and CDs when we were cleaning the house. I despised it. I hated his voice so much. I hated everything about that music. Except now I love it. Old man, take a look at my life. I'm a lot like you. Not destroy, but became the thing I thought I would never be. I grew up with the mentality that if I work my butt off I will get ahead. Was taught that government workers are lazy and that I shouldn't go down that road. I worked in a corporate environment for 10 years and worked my way up the corporate ladder to a senior management position. I became burned out and depressed from working what felt like 24/7, was treated like a robot and couldn't turn my brain off work. I would go to bed and wake up reading and writing emails, on the phone to and from work. I quit that job and got a management position in government. Work-life balance is amazing. I still work hard but only during work hours now, haha. I feel like a person again. I've become the old man who wants peace and quiet in his home. Also, parking in my driveway when you're not coming to see me is the best way to start a problem with me. I mean, I'm in my 20s and I feel the same. Someone had the audacity to stick a political sign in my yard, and I was very unhappy. Lots of tutting. I work in retail. Once I had to ask to see the manager because a worker was refusing a refund even though I had my receipt. The item was in perfect condition and it was within the warranty. I was at a different store so no one knew I was an actual employee for the company, and the manager realized the worker legit just never got taught how to do a return and was just refusing any returns because he didn't want to ask a manager. So technically I helped the guy but hurt my soul to get someone to call the manager over for me. I had this at my last job, military. I spent most of my time at the job hating the ease with which people in authority could frick up the lives and careers of their subordinates. I felt that a lot of leaders quickly lost empathy once they gained power, all of which came flooding back to me my last year once I was in a position of authority and was writing up the paperwork to have my new soldier punished. As a long-term server bartender manager, I hate having to send my food back. It has to be like totally fricked up. I like my steak rare, but if it's overcooked up to like mid, well, I can still enjoy it. Might need some kind of sauce if it's MW, but I was at a high-end restaurant and my rare steak that cost like $50 was burnt to crap. I had to speak up. I was as nice as I possibly could be but still felt like a monster. It took years before I was finally able to build up my confidence after being bullied in high school. After a couple of years working, however, I realized I'd been picking on people at work just for the fun of it. I had always dreamt of rubbing my bullies' faces with my success, but I subconsciously turned into a bully while chasing that imagined success. Yeah, that's usually how bullying spreads, and I was also in a similar place, but you just HV to move on. As a teenager I was a pop punk, hated the government, loved anarchy, did tons of drugs, swore I'd never be one of those mainstream sheep. Now I work in an office for the government. I don't do drugs. I own a house, own stocks. Think about my retirement portfolio. Yeah, I sold out, but of my friends who never did. 2 died of ODs and 1 is 40 years old working the night shift in a gas station for minimum wage. If that's what I had to look forward to, I'm okay with being a sellout. Yeah man, growing up is okay. I still get called boring by my deadbeat but old friends from back home. I ate an entire box of double stuffed Oreos in one sitting while playing some games. I like to think of myself as a generally healthy person. I exercise and have been trying to reduce my meat consumption to have more balanced meals. But man, when I could feel the crumbs of those black Oreo cookies and see their smudges was a time when I thought to myself, I have become a monument to all my greed. I am extremely impressed that you ate that many Oreos. I can barely eat 2. When I promised myself I wouldn't end up like those lazy good-for-nothing kids that don't have a job, still live in their parents' house and do nothing but sit around all day, guess who does all that? Me. Same. To be fair, I graduated college right before COVID hit, and that put a dent on my plans to move out somewhere where the lockdown is more serious. I work part-time and want to move out so badly, but I'm just waiting for the right time. Growing up my family didn't have the money for luxuries, and my perspective was formed by that experience. I used to scoff at expense and excess as a pointless waste, but having nice things is pretty sweet. NGL. Wouldn't go back. Reddit. Look at these Facebook pages stealing videos off of creators. Anyway, here's a YouTube video that I'm hosting on the Reddit. The hypocrisy of it all. People on Reddit get upset when someone takes something from Reddit and posts it on YouTube or Instagram. The thing is, Reddit takes a lot from other websites, especially from 4chan and news sites. When I realized I'm the boss now, I don't really have a boss. It's weird. The owner is ostensibly my boss, but he won't manage the company. Therefore each area manager is the boss. I'm way too immature for this. Hep, more or less where I'm at. I basically just have to ask my boss if something I want to do is illegal. If not, then develop the idea further, and once I'm ready to implement I go ask if any changes made are illegal. Just has the benefit of experience. When I hated my dad's abuse for years and years and years to a point where I developed CPTSD, and as an adult I swore I'd never let myself get to that point. But just last month my best friend of 6 years blocked me on everything one day, and I found she had made a post on a Reddit expressing how disrespectful, toxic, and stressful I was. She had told me at one point, you know, you seem to really hate the abuse you've been through, but you don't realize how similar you are to him. I've been spending the last 2 months being unable to sleep knowing that I'll let myself get to this point, and I've just been isolating myself from people now. I've been beating myself up every day over those words, because even though they hurt a lot, there was a reason she ran off from speaking to me. At least you're trying to change, but nothing's gonna change if you go from abusing others to abusing yourself. Try getting a therapist, if you can afford one or if you aren't seeing one currently. Are you asking if I'm a corporate shill? Because yes I am. Ever get a letter from a corporation politely telling you to frick off? I write those. Hang in there buddy. I'm sure one day you'll get a promotion to write letters rudely telling people to frick off. I believe in you. When I realized I was arguing online with some idiot over something I really didn't give a crap about. Always tried to be more kind and positive because of petty argumentative buttholes online, but then I became that dickhead. 2020 has been a pretty wild ride. Went to grad school for geophysics and my thesis was geothermal energy resource scouting. Immediately was offered a very high paying job for the oil and gas industry. I ended up turning it down to stay green, but oh man, that was a tough decision. Frick, that is a really hard decision. When I was a kid, I railed against smoking weed. I would tell people about how it makes people unfocused, unmotivated, and lazy. I even participated in school projects where we made videos about how bad marijuana is. Now, I smoke pretty much every day. Many of my friends tried weed for the first time because of me, and I've become very unfocused, unproductive, and lazy. At 15 I was a devout Christian. I even went to camps and won theology competitions. If you showed me a picture of a naked lady, I'd cover my eyes and feel extra sinful that day. Now I'm agnostic and I haven't been inside a church for years. I'm thinking about starting my tattoo sleeves soon and I fap regularly. Total 180. It was when I had earned degrees in a useful field, took a job working first shift Monday through Friday starting at 7:30 am, and bought a house in the suburbs. A 20-year-old me would be spinning in his grave. I have ruined my relationship by behaving frantically and out of control when I, always incorrectly, perceive abandonment or rejection. I have now succeeded in actually pushing my boyfriend away for the final time as of yesterday. Yay, joined the club. Got left by the girl I'd been with for nearly 5 years that loved me like no one ever did and with who we had concrete marriage plans and family plans. Just cause I've got massive abandonment anxiety and self-love is a foreign concept to me. Happy days. Told my parents all the time that their bloodline ends with me. They'd better hope my brother has all the grandkids, because I won't. I have a 17-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old son. I sure showed them. I said if never have kids, ever, but here I am next to my baby. Mine is music related. I used to mock many different kinds of music for being what I deemed lesser forms of music. Mainly because I play many instruments and am partial to music made solely with instruments. I have always enjoyed other forms of music, but I never would advocate for it, or admit that I liked it, simply because I didn't want to be associated with the world surrounding them, the fans and so on. Now I make and actively participate in nearly all the kinds of music I mocked before. Funny enough, it was the Lego movie that helped me see the different side of things with my ignorant perspective. As they describe a scene in the movie where the child is explaining why the creativity that looks chaotic is not necessarily bad. It hit me hard, because much like the Overlord, Will Ferrell, I too sought order and structure amidst what I deemed was musical chaos. Now, I see the joy of inspiration that one form of music can leave on others as well as how many different influences a musician can have. That is my little story. I'm cool with it now, but had I met my 18-year-old self, I would have probably called me a sellout. I have become that which I sought to destroy. Used to utterly hate Taco Bell, always threw a fit whenever we'd eat there as kids. Then as a young adult, I discovered the steak quesarito. Sorry brothers. This year, the school bus drop-off is right in front of my house. The other day some kids got off the bus and cut across my lawn. I got irrationally upset. Then I realized I have turned into my father. High school kids beat down the fence connecting my yard to the baseball field so they could climb it easier. High school said they were sorry, paid to replace the fence with a much higher and nicer one, and installed a gate on their side of the adjacent wall. For your information, I attended that high school and like, come on guys, hop it, I don't care, but don't destroy a fellow classmate's property. As a child I used to see my mum cry a lot, and as the oldest I was always the one to comfort her. I promised her I'd make her happy when I grew up. Joke's on me, now we're both depressed. Working in big pharma, I never wanted to work for a company who make money from the less fortunate. 16-year-old me would detest me, but I was out of a job for 2 years and needed money to support myself. I'm trying to get out of that company now. Unless you absolutely detest the field, don't be too hard on it. Yes, the leadership of these companies is focused on the money, but without them a lot of majorly needed medications wouldn't even exist. Their greed funds the research needed to help people. My brother said he'll install TikTok just to hate on it. Now he's addicted to it and stays up until 4 AM watching it. Send help. When I remonstrated with someone for writing code that was completely out of agreed specification. When I was in college, I resented conventions, and as a junior coder I always tried to express myself. I always told myself I would be more tolerant. When I had more experience, I was engaging in code review and carefully explaining why it made sense to follow the specification, including published coding conventions. And when I heard their tone of resigned irritation, I realized I have become an experienced coder that is a stickler for coding conventions. In 9th grade, I got bullied a lot because everyone thought I was a dangerous kid or something. Someone told me the year after that they thought that because I'm a metalhead meant that I would do some bad stuff. I never hurt anyone, but I didn't help my case and eventually got the police's attention for all the wrong reasons. Thankfully never went back there, not like I had much of a choice in the matter anyway. I couldn't understand how anyone would ever choose to study business or economics. Sounded boring AF, and if I knew one thing I didn't want to study, it was that. Well, guess what, I will be enrolling in for my masters. Growing up, all 5 members of my family besides me smoked cigarettes and my older siblings smoked weed. I decided to never smoke anything in my life. I've been smoking weed for about 3 years now. Smoke weed at reasonable intervals. So I play Overwatch and I main Mercy. I used to say things like I hate those Mercies who pocket Genghis and show off their legendary skins. They're annoying. Cut to me, 3 years later with a Mercy golden gun, pocketing my Genji friend to help him level up. My mom left at some point, and when she did, of course, I always swore up and down that I'd never be like her. Years later, after really looking at my behavior, in my relationships, friendships, etc., I tend to just bail with no explanation whenever things get too hard or confusing. Sometimes it is absolutely the right move, but I just go through life never confronting anyone and just sticking around until I can't take it anymore, and then I bounce. I think sometimes you don't want to be a certain way, but the pattern of behavior gets ingrained in you anyway, and so when conflict comes up or you feel uncomfortable, you just do what you know. I've definitely seen this with folks who had abusive parents who swore up and down they would never be abusive or date someone who abuses them. But the instinct overrides logical thought and suddenly they are back in a bad situation wondering how they got there. I saw what looked like scraps left over after rolling a joint on the living room table at the apartment of one of my patients. I worked with kids at the time. I could lose my professional license for not reporting the parent. I chose to take that risk and let the parent know that I saw something that if it was what it looked like I would be obligated to report her to CPS. The parent, being an idiot, proceeded to send me a self-incriminating text begging me to ignore it. I told her that I'm not sure what I saw and not to be dumb in the future. Paraphrasing. I make my kids close their online game, Fortnite usually, before the round is over. I know they can't save. I don't care, because I told them not to start the new round since we have to leave at a certain time or when dinner is ready and they need to set the table. It hurts my soul to admit that maybe my mom and dad were right. I wrote a song when I was 23. I wrote a song, facetiously, mocking the ideas of living in the countryside, talking about mortgages, going to visit friends to play board games and eat cake, and then going home early. I recorded it when I was 29. I am now 32. Here's where I am. Have a mortgage, and regularly talk about it with other mortgage having friends. Play lots of board games when I am with friends. Frequently go home early from visits because friends live further away and, you know, I wanna sleep. And recently the prospect of living in the countryside has seemed very, very appealing. In my AP US history class I had to debate about whether or not Jackson should be taken off the $20 bill, and my teacher assigned me against taking him off, so I had to defend Andrew Jackson, and as I was debating I was realizing that all of my arguments were basically the arguments that Trump supporters have about Trump. I hated myself for a long time after that. Hey, don't beat yourself up. Low stakes debates like that are a great way to help you iron out your thoughts, and nobody suffered from your opinion. I always used to make fun of the way my mill talks about to her 2 sons. Then I realized I talk to my 2 dogs the same way. Mine's kind of backwards from the typical, but I used to rail against Renos, thought systemic racism was a faux concept, was opposed to gay marriage, hated Democrats. Now I'm a centrist leaning conservative planning to vote for a centrist Democrat to save us from the people I used to be. I grew up working on a cattle ranch and watching Fox News. Asked for and got the Bill O'Reilly for Kids book for my 13th birthday. Now I hang out with socialists and bake vegan cookies for BLM protesters. Those cheap self-promoters in comments that be like I hate cheap self-promoting too. But would you please check me out? I have good memes. When my father passed away I begged my mom to quit smoking, which he did. Couldn't stand when my parents smoked. Hated the smell. I started smoking 4 years later. Frick. If you try to quit and fail, that's okay. Just keep trying. And don't beat yourself up about your addiction. Nicotine is sinister in its methods of self-justification. And breaking away takes time. Just recently managed to go a whole day without a cigarette for the first time in years. A small victory, but a victory nonetheless. This one's actually a good thing. I used to be insanely homophobic. Like, they are criminals and evil and all that crap. After quarantine began, I realized that my parents were conspiracy theorists when they told me that 5G cell towers caused cancer. I lost a lot of trust in them. So since they brainwashed me into hating the LGBT community, I reconsidered my opinions on that and a lot of other stuff too. Long story short, I'm working to remove all the hatred and evilness from myself, and to accept the LGBT community as I accept anyone else. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.